In our sundown perambulations of late, through the outer parts of Brooklyn, we have observed several parties of youngsters playing base, a certain game of ball. Let us go forth a while and get better air in our lungs. Let us leave our close rooms. The game of ball is glorious. Walt Whitman.
Baseball. With author and storyteller Garrison Keillor's soothing baritone, documentary filmmaker Ken Burns used these words to confirm Walt Whitman's status as the bard of baseball. Keillor read a compressed excerpt from an editorial published in the Brooklyn Daily Eagle. Whitman was the Daily Eagle's editor. The editorial is noteworthy not just for its subject matter and engaging cadence, it is noteworthy for its prescience. The year of its publishing, 1846, was early in the history of a nascent sport that soon would become the national game, baseball. Through this editorial and a few other references, Whitman has become widely seen as a deep and durable literary interpreter of baseball as a metaphor for the American experiment. At his most irresistible and often quoted, he refers to baseball as the hurrah game, as America's game, as a game that has the snap, go, fling of American atmosphere, not just as a game, but as part of American life that belongs as much to our institutions, fits into them as significantly as our constitutions and laws, is just as important as the sum total of our historic life. Lowell Edwin Folsom of the University of Iowa, for example, contends that no writer since Whitman has exceeded such extravagant and fervent claims for the game, that Whitman's baseball credo could only have been spoken by a man who grew up with the sport, who saw the democratic demands of skill force gentlemen to give way to the young roughs, and who saw the baseball team itself become an image of America, accepting and absorbing men from all walks of life, immigrants from all over the world, molding them into one body, a union committed to a common purpose. This may be true. It is a compelling Whitman-esque vision of baseball. But did Whitman draw those connections in his literary work? That is less clear. If, as they say, baseball is a game of inches, literature is a pursuit of letters. Walt Whitman was a writer. It seems reasonable to judge the weight, warp, and woof of his literary outlook on baseball based on what he wrote about baseball. He didn't write much. Simply put, in the 46 years starting with the publication of the 1846 Brooklyn Daily Eagle editorial until the time of Whitman's death in 1892, one can count the number of Whitman's published baseball clippings on the fingers of both hands and have fingers left over. Let's look at the specifics. During his years as a newspaperman, Whitman's writing was prolific. He likely wrote daily and wrote multiple pieces each day. Yet, Whitman's scholarship has identified the single 1846 editorial as his sole journalistic essay on baseball yet discovered. The same holds true for Whitman's news reporting. John Thorne, Major League Baseball's official historian, identified with excitement a June 18, 1858 newspaper report of a game between the Brooklyn Atlantics and the Brooklyn Putnams. It appeared in the Brooklyn Daily Times and was attributed to Whitman. Thorne referred to the story as Whitman's only known reportage of a baseball game. The celebrated hurrah game quote, meanwhile, is not part of Whitman's published record. It is a transcription of an oral statement Whitman reportedly made a few years prior to his death. It was first published posthumously, indeed years after Whitman's death, by acolyte Horace Traubel as part of a 9-volume biography. The proof of the literary pudding, though, may lie in Whitman's evolutionary masterwork, Leaves of Grass. From first publication in 1855 through each of the subsequent editions of Leaves of Grass, baseball made the cut. The following passage appeared amid the pages of poetry that catalog, list, and itemize hundreds of attributes and activities that by Whitman's lights illuminate American landscape, ideals, enthusiasms, and possibilities. Upon the racecourse, or enjoy picnics, or jigs, or a good game of baseball, at he festivals with blackguard jibes and ironical license and bull dances and drinking and laughter. The next two revisions, 1856 and 1860, but not those that followed, Whitman added a second baseball reference as part of a list. The ladders and hanging ropes of the gymnasium, manly exercises, the game of baseball, running, leaping, pitching, quoits. Measuring Whitman's interest, though, should not simply be seen as a numbers game. Whitman had many enthusiasms. He was passionate about all of them. Baseball probably was one of them. But Whitman's literary attention to baseball does not seem as great as its popular focus seems to suggest. Consider other words Whitman used or could have used that have common baseball usages. The word bat appears 19 times in 1855 Leaves of Grass. The letters are buried in the words Sabbath, bath, bathe, baton, but not baseball references. Whitman doesn't use the word diamond once. Field appears in the 1855 Leaves of Grass 18 times, but in connection with orchards, hillsides, pastures, plowing, and yes, doing battle, not playing baseball. The 9 references to ball in Leaves of Grass concern lead balls, snowballs, a ballroom, a fireball from a meteor, a ballast from a ship, a ball of yarn, and balls of dung. This doesn't mean Whitman was not interested in baseball, but scratching around in the archives for obvious but only occasional references to its play in atmospherics, maybe we are missing other more abstract but just as compelling connections. In his poem, To Think of Time, Whitman begins, "To think of time, of all that retrospection, to think of today and the ages continued henceforth. Have you guessed you yourself would not continue? Have you dreaded these earth beetles? Have you feared the future would be nothing to you?" Baseball is an earthly pursuit that operates outside of time. A game's ending occurs independent of the passage of time. Maybe To Think of Time is a baseball poem. Maybe there are other examples of Whitman taking his work into extra innings.